Welcome to New Business in Later Life, where we prove that it's never too late to pursue your entrepreneurial dreams. You will meet remarkable individuals who launch successful businesses over 50, sharing their stories, challenges, and enthusiasm. Your host, Ildiko, is a former social housing professional, textile designer, and teacher who described herself as a life artist. She is now a property professional, business network host, and facilitator of the Encorepreneurs Club. Subscribe now to hear these inspiring stories every week.
Today I welcome to the studio a man who I consider to be a polymath. He's from Cornwall, but he worked 25 years in industrial sectors. He worked with lots of international colleagues from varied specialisms. In these roles, he developed passion for developing people and discovered to live life with purpose. He is now a mentor to varied individuals. They could be side hustlers, entrepreneurs, business owners, and all he wants to do is to turn their great ideas into successful outcomes. In addition to all of this, he's also a musician. He plays the trombone and he toured from small Cornish festivals all the way to the Royal Albert Hall and across Germany. Buckle up for stories, giggles, and great advice from Clive. Good morning, Clive. Welcome to the show, New Business in Later Life. Thank you very much for joining me on the sofa.
Good morning. And how was your journey here this morning?
Oh, from Plymouth. It was busy. Well, I had a 10-minute delay, so I think they had a bit of a knock-on effect, so you got a bit busier than I expected. But I still got here in an hour, so that was pretty okay. You came up through...
Up from Truro. So I live in our capital city, shall we call it, with a view over the cathedral. Someone always refers to my apartment as being close to all of the bars and restaurants. So,
okay, I thought you were going to say the church bell.
Well, we can hear the church bells. There's about 3, which is lovely on a Sunday morning when all the bells
beautiful.
Are pealing. But just up the road, we've got a pub. Just down the road, we've got a pub and a restaurant. Then you've got the Hall for Cornwall doing theatre.
I suppose a town centre would be, wouldn't it?
Well,
on the contrary, I live right outside of Plymouth, right by the Tamar River. You can see the bridges from our dining room. So, yeah, very quiet. And I like it very, very quiet.
Yeah, nice place to sit back and reflect.
Yes, absolutely. I love my view in the morning.
Yeah, mine is of the top of the 3rd spire of the cathedral. So.
There you go. Yeah. Very special.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for joining me. Let's jump straight in.
Yeah.
And my very first question to you will be, what is your newest business?
So the newest business was formed last year.
Okay.
So for everyone that's listening or watching, I'm now 61, so I'm definitely an encore entrepreneur or an oldpreneur, depends how you want to look at it.
No, you're not old. You don't look a day older.
I think the most important thing about being old is not the amount of times that you've revolved around the sun. I think that's irrelevant. It's how old you feel inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a musician. I have been a little bit of a thespian, pantomime mainly.
Right, okay.
Oh, no, you haven't. Oh, yes, I have. All of that stuff. And I love giving performance through music in the same way as I like giving performance through my activities. So the latest business is a CIC with 2 directors, myself and a guy called Stephen Webb, tetraplegic ex-mayor of Truro City, now I believe running in May 2025 for council. We came up with an idea that started in lockdown, so 2020. Yeah, we remember that period.
Yes, we do very well. Yeah. Actually, literally this week is the 5th anniversary, isn't it?
Exactly.
It feels unreal.
It feels unreal, but I think we learnt lessons from that, albeit we hated it. I'm a social butterfly. I network like a ninja. I love people. I love performance. And I love just getting out there and finding out what makes people tick. You know, what lets their internal tuning fork resonate or to make them content in their own skin. And I was locked in a house, in an apartment here in Truro. So clap for carers, we remember that. Yeah, yes. 8 o'clock where we all rattled our tins and
God,
clapped.
I really hated it. I must admit, we never really took part in it because some of it was just so fake. Like next door neighbours would have their parents round in their back garden and friends sitting out on the street, and then they would be out there clapping. And it's like, hang on a minute, you're doing the opposite of what you should be doing.
100%.
So yeah, for us it was always dinner time. So we were literally sitting at the dinner table listening to everybody clapping in the street. Yeah. But obviously in spirit we did think of them. But anyhow, so you are very much a master of have I done it? No, I haven't. You still haven't told us what your business is.
So the business is called The Cornwall 500. which, as I said, is a CIC. So during lockdown, what I set up was I needed something to occupy my brain so that I could probably stop opening the bottle of wine too early. That's the honest answer. My daily exercise was going down to the nearest shop and seeing how much wine I could carry back up the hill.
Was that allowed? A friend of mine told me that she actually had to buy one of those trolley things because the security guard at the shop told her that she wasn't shopping enough. That what was she doing out? So.
Yeah, you had to literally go to do your week shopping. But my week shopping, I think, consisted more of wine than it did crisps or cheese or salamis or anything like that. And then I needed an excuse. I wanted to occupy my brain, and there was two ways that I facilitated that. One was I looked at the North Coast 500, which is a route around the outlying roads of Scotland, and I put a pin into the country, spun it around, and went, they can do that up there. Why can't we do that down here? So I went on to Google Maps. Other maps are available, and I found a route of about 500 miles. Going around the perimeter of Cornwall by the nearest navigable road. So not the coastal path, which has been walked by so many over such a period of time, but was to try and make Cornwall more accessible, more inclusive, so that more people could get to see the bits of Cornwall that most people don't get to see. So, and also, but if we could do it by push bike, or maybe by, in this case, the first person to use it was my co-director, Stephen Webb, in an electric wheelchair, towing a model of the Cornwall Air Ambulance, raising funds to try and get a campaign, which is for the second air ambulance up into the sky. We refer to it as to get 2 red dots in the sky to give people hope at a time when they need it the most. So sat there in my study, trying to find this navigable route around Cornwall, and I got to it was about 478 miles, with a few incursions inland.
Can I ask, did you just want to do the coastal outline of Cornwall, or the Devon and Cornwall border is included as well? So would it be a full circle?
Full circle, so it includes the coastline of Cornwall and its border with Devon. So it took us around literally from Plymouth all the way around the River Tamar and then up
Saltash,
to...
actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, Saltash and through. You've got the Tiddy and then the Tamar that sort of goes around there, heading right up into where GCHQ have got their aliens stored. I'm sure there's aliens. And I think the one thing that we found is actually there are some beautiful places down the hill and up dale, valleys, roads. If you take one road, which takes you from Plymouth and Saltash all the way up through until you get to Bude, it is a beautiful stretch. If you do one down towards Penzance and Pendine, there are parts of Cornwall which I think most people don't get the opportunity at a slow pace to be able to soak in. So I created this 500-mile route, and I thought, this is something I can do. And then we came out of lockdown, things got busy, we needed to earn a living, so it went up onto a shelf. Stephen Webb.
I thought that then when we were allowed out of lockdown, you actually got on and travelled it.
Well, we started it. It's funny you should say. So my wife and I, Julia, the long-suffering wife and I...
I'm sure she loves you.
We had a camper van at that time, and we did 3 sections of 50 miles of the route, ending up in Tintagel, just by the castle. And that was when the message came through on the radio that said, go home, stay safe, save the NHS. So we literally didn't get any further. And Julie, at that time, we think probably had COVID as well. So we returned home and nothing ever happened to it. Stephen Webb came to me in probably February last year. And he said, Clive, I need a challenge. I want to do John O'Groats to Land's End again.
And you said...
could I just clarify? What did you mean again? Well, last time I fell into a pothole in Mansfield and broke my shoulder. So this is a tetraplegic in a wheelchair breaking a shoulder. The most important thing that came out of that conversation was I said, well, before we tried to do that challenge that we've already said didn't quite work last time, how about this Cornwall 500? Literally 6 weeks later, we had a website, a company, formed a CIC, contacted the air ambulance and said, we'd like to support you because they saved his life, which is how he ended up as a tetraplegic by diving into a swimming pool at Truro School, and unfortunately had to be taken to City Hospital, which was then on Infirmary Road in Truro. And then he was taken by an air ambulance to Salisbury, which undoubtedly saved his life. So there's a meaningful purpose
absolutely,
towards fundraising. So on September the 1st last year...
2024?
Yeah.
Yes.
On the anniversary of the day he was flown to Salisbury, we set off to do 500 miles in 30 days in an electric wheelchair, towing a model of the air ambulance.
Were you doing the towing, or was the electric wheelchair doing the towing?
Electric wheelchair was doing the towing, and as Stephen, well, he will listen to this. So yes, Stephen, I did only ever turn up when the sun was shining and never when it was raining. By all means, go and have a look on our socials. The Cornwall 500 is on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and obviously we've got all the W's for thecornwall500.com. As we speak, I'm 2 days away from doing a gala dinner, which is going to be at a place called the Alverton Hotel in Truro, again, my hometown.
Well, shame that the episode obviously won't be going out beforehand.
No, but I think what you'll be able to see when you go onto the website, you'll see there's been this big event. So
yes.
People will be able to see the money that we're raising to try and get to the last stage of getting the second helicopter kitted out. And then the CIC has been formed to fund the ability to keep those 2 helicopters in the air moving forward.
So obviously people who get inspired by your story here, listening to this episode, will still be able to go onto your website and donate.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the charity.
Donate, or maybe even start to collect what we've done. Start to collect QR codes. So QR codes have been created like crumbs around Cornwall, which will tell stories of culture, communities, commerce, or maybe just that bit of Cornwall that people have never found out about.
So obviously a lot of people come to Cornwall for holiday all year round, not just in the summer. So how can you incorporate this new creation, the QR code creation, into people's holidays?
So part of that is what we're working with Visit Cornwall. We actually have in discussions with them now, and also within the Southwest Tourism arena. To actually, you can go to any one of the places that Stephen has dropped one of these QR codes. You scan it with your phone and it comes up with a story about that place, or a story about the air ambulance where someone's life was rescued. Or it might be a story about an individual or a person or a village that has done something really special for the county of Cornwall. And when you see that QR code, it will tell you the QR code before it and the QR code after it.
So you can have a little
gradually, like collecting them like the old football stickers used to be.
Well, like some years ago, I was in an artist group, and we did these painted stones, and people were encouraged to leave them around Dartmoor or on the trail of the Open Studios period, and that kind of stuff. And then people of all ages could collect them.
Yeah, very similar to that.
Yes.
So, but instead of having a stone with a story or a painting that they could collect or take an image on their social media and then post and put it back for someone else to find, these QR codes are fixed at certain locations. No one other than us knows all of the locations.
Whoa.
Because you scan one, it tells you the one before and the one after, and it starts your journey.
I would say you actually have to end up doing the entire 500-mile journey in order to collect all of them.
Yeah, you could take a lifetime to do it.
How long did it take, Stephen, to...
we did it in 20 days of activity during 30 days of September. So, and he did...
Wow. How many days did you do?
He did 25 miles per day. I did 5 of those days.
So since you already admitted that you only went out on sunny days...
Yeah, correct. He got very wet. We got the waterlogged electrics in his wheelchair. We ended up with punctures in his wheelchair. We ended up with the brakes failing. He ended up skidding into ditches, all sorts of stuff.
No.
It was a great deal of consequence, dilemma and constraint that sort of led to jeopardy where we weren't quite sure what was going to happen the next day. But I did the good stuff.
Did you?
So I managed, unbeknown to Stephen, that I was going to get him to go to the Isles of Scilly on his wheelchair. The first time he has ever been to the Isles of Scilly. So the amazing people of the steamship company and the Isles of Scilly travel company assisted us with a ramp to be able to get on, fully accessible, fully inclusive, welcomed us with open arms. We landed in St Mary's. I was on an electric bike, yes, not a real bike, an electric bike, and I joined him for a circuit of the inner and outer roads on St Mary's on that day, travelling over on the Selonian and back, Selonian
Is it the ferry?
Yeah, so by 2026 there'll be a new one. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the trek around the island, is that part of the 500 miles?
Yeah.
Right. So if anybody wants to complete the 500 miles, they have to include the island.
To include
That's
the Isles
very
of Scilly,
interesting.
so Cornwall and Isles of Scilly.
I have another question about the QR codes.
Yeah.
So did Stephen did this idea come up prior to doing the challenge?
Yes.
So did Stephen drop the QR codes during his first trek of the 500 miles?
Yes, he put around 50 of the QR codes whilst he was doing his 500 miles. There will eventually be around 100, some of which are commercial. If we take a group of hotels, or maybe the Eden Project, or maybe a restaurant in Mevagissey or Charlestown, or maybe an art gallery down at Mousehole, or maybe up in Bude, where there's the Bude Sea Pool, which has been made accessible to people that previously couldn't get to a sea bathing pool. So there's a little bit of something about each area, story about the area, story about the air ambulance's connection to the area. And we live in a beautiful place on this beautiful planet, circling around that sun in a squirrely thing that's spinning through another thing that no one really understands. And it's an opportunity to slow down, take an opportunity to soak in and immerse yourself into proper Cornwall, what the people are about, the culture, the commerce, and more importantly, the stories of communities and how people have been helped.
I was just going to say, what I love about this whole thing, that although it's a whole that is like this 500-mile journey and up to 100 QR codes, but wherever people holiday in Cornwall, they can take a snippet of it and make it their own during their weekend away or week-long holiday. I imagine it's all inclusive of the children, any age family. And as you said, Stephen was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
You yourself are not a spring chicken, unfortunately, anymore. So literally anybody can take on that little part of the challenge that fits their part of their holiday.
Whether you're being pushed in a pushchair or whether you're there in a wheelchair. So accessible, inclusive, sustainable, and bringing...
A family on a bicycle.
Yeah, Cornwall through a new lens, let's put it that way. So the company was formed last year. The first inaugural use by Stephen was done in September. We have the gala dinner, which is going to be happening in a couple of weeks, which will be March 2025. And that will lead now to us gradually placing the rest of the 50 QR codes at various locations, so that then people can gradually, over a period of time, they could do it in a week if they really wanted to, or they could do it over a lifetime of coming to Cornwall and seeing bits that other people didn't see. So that's my most recent business, and I'm very proud of that, and I earn no money from that.
I was going to say that it is a business, I suppose, because it's a registered company, even though it's a charity, but that makes no difference in that sense. But it's a business because you are raising money for a good cause, for another business you're supporting. But in terms of running it as a business, so there's two directors, so that you need to have a structure. Do you have literally like a business plan with it? Do you know how much money you want to raise for the Cornwall Air Ambulance?
Well, we set a target for raising funds for the inaugural use, and we achieved £12,000, which we were very, very pleased with. The big gala dinner, we hope to raise another slug of money. But the business itself, it's that bit of altruism or philanthropy that actually, if you can help others without a want of self, there's something about your inner core that even just talking about it now puts the hairs up on the back of your head, a lump in your throat, and you feel good. I can hear James Brown singing "I Feel Good." We'll put that probably as a tune over the top. And yes, there is a structure. We've got a sales director, which is Simon Jones. We've got who's an employed person for the role. We've had assistants through social media, because whilst we think we're good with our thumbs on social media, there are young people out there. Shannon, you were amazing, and still are. And it's really important that we have this structure of both being able to commercially bring in the revenue from those organisations that are willing to pay for a plaque, about 1/3 of them, and about 2/3 will then be completely free, but being able to tell that story of community and culture. There will be paraphernalia, regalia, from hats, jackets, waistcoats, maybe even stickers. I don't know if you can see here, but on my lapel, there's a little pin badge. Those are brand
That's
new.
really sweet, yes.
Those will be issued to all of our guests on Thursday.
Is the pin upside down or Cornwall is upside down?
I think you're right. Cornwall's upside down. I put it there on purpose.
Viewing it from the North Pole.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter what perspective you look at.
That's true,
Cornwall.
actually.
If you're up in space, as we've seen with an awful lot of pictures of Cornwall, because it's clearly the best place in the world. And that's one of the reasons we have clear skies, so you get good views of us. We've got Goonhilly Earth Station, we've got GCHQ. We launched a space rocket from Newquay. So there is a little bit of everything happening behind a tall Cornish hedge. So the CIC is the most recent company, so altruistic, philanthropic, and for making sure the people of Cornwall can continue to have red dots in the sky that will give them hope at times of need. But we can't do purely altruistic and philanthropic activities unless we have some revenue coming in.
Yes.
And let's not forget that we need to earn some revenue to be able to give us the life that we want, irrespective of how much you might want to give away to other people. So maybe we should look at the business that I started before that.
Let's do that.
So the business I started before that would have been a shipping and logistics company called Coastal Wise Limited. I started that company in 2013 with a co-director, Alan Watts, who's now chair of the British Legion over in Foy. If ever pop in for a pint, really cheap, great location. QR code on the outside.
You should be doing adverts. you are obviously performing very, very well in front of the camera. So those listeners who let's listen to it on Apple or Spotify or other audio platforms, just watch it on YouTube. Honestly,
yeah, watch me on YouTube. I talk with my hands.
Clive is quite an actor. Yes.
So we formed that company because I was working with a company up in the southeast. And we did some amazing projects, which were, for those people, again, you can research this. There's a thing called the Elizabeth Line, which was a new London Underground.
Yes.
Prior to that, it was called Crossrail. That's the name of the project. I, for my sins and my previous life, was a logistician and supply chain, allegedly expert. I hate that phrase.
But
Not even a specialist.
So just to connect to things, so these things you've just described must be assisting you with the CIC huge amounts.
Exactly. I think logistics, I always refer to it as a dark science. Supply chain, connecting people from one place to another by different modes or nodes. And then you could have shipping or road or rail or barges or stores or all of that activity. But it's a science of actually being able to look at a geographical area spatially and being able to, I can see stuff in my head way before I can actually put it down into writing.
That's really interesting.
And literally now there are 1,000 things floating around, probably like some kind of undiagnosed ADHD. But more importantly, that I can visualize stuff spatially by walking into a room or looking at a county and creating a route. Or more importantly, I can also dive deep into sectors and gain a quick understanding by, I think, a general knowledge of what I had many, many years ago, which I'm sure we'll come back to. And I became the supply chain and logistics marine manager for the Crossrail project. It was subcontracted to 3 mega construction companies. And my job was to move the I think Boris Johnson, who was then UK Prime Minister, good, bad, I don't care. But he was in charge at the time, and he referred to this project as the metal moles. I'm doing a Pac-Man for those that are listening. Metal moles going underneath London, and at the back of the mole, obviously, becomes its waste.
Yes.
My job was to move that waste from those locations and take it to what became an RSPB, Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, a wildlife park, which was in Burnham-on-Crouch, called Wallasey Island.
Whereabout is that?
So southeast, above London, there's a river called the River Crouch, and on that there's a place called Burnham-on-Crouch. And on the way through the river to Burnham-on-Crouch, on the left-hand side, there's a place called Wallasey Island, a wetlands bird reserve for the RSPB.
Because I would imagine there's like absolutely thousands of tons of earth that came out of those tunnels.
1.3 million.
Yes. Yeah, as I said the word thousands, I thought probably I'm way off.
So my job was to get barges.
You can build a mountain.
Yeah, it was at one point there was literally were mountains of muck. They call it a muckaway in that industry.
But still, that's proper good soil, isn't it?
Some of it is good. Some of it, obviously, there is different. And again, without going into too much detail, there
geology.
are sands, there are gravels, there are muds, there are clays. There's even flint, really hard material. And all of that material was segregated and taken up to be able to create banks and line areas where water could then be flooded so that a wildlife wetlands reserve for birds could be created on their migration.
That sounds beautiful.
So when I've given this talk before at University of Plymouth to the graduates in the shipping industry and logistics, you've got to engage them. They're not necessarily there to listen. They're just there because they've got to put it in. And I opened up with Pac-Man to solve angry birds, and that was basically my pitch. I loved doing what I did, working in and around London with some incredible people, some very, very, very clever people. And I did my small part in being able to make a brand new London Underground called the Elizabeth Line a reality. That had followed on from a short and small project working for what is known as Thames Water, and they had a tunnel to be built. And we won a contract that was failing from someone else. And we managed to make it successful. And literally on that day, I became a specialist, according to the industry, because no one else had ever done it and made it successful in that way. So that led to Crossrail approaching us, or the mega construction companies tendering for the project Crossrail, contacting us and saying, please, would you help us? And that, following the end of our activities on the Elizabeth Line, we were then approached by an organisation called Bazalgette. Again, for those that don't know who Bazalgette is, he created the Victorian sewage system for London. The Victorian, Edwardian and Gregorian sewage systems within London needed upgrade to be able to cope with the population for the next 100 years within London. So they were going to dig tunnels, again, more Pac-Man, yes, going, but this time underneath the River Thames, going from Greenwich on the east, going all the way up to where, almost to where the tidal Thames stops and at Richmond's Locks. And there were three parts to it. So there was what they called the west, the mid or central and the east. We were successful on the East contract, again with three mega construction companies.
That's interesting that they would employ three different companies for all the sections, because I would imagine companies would work really quite differently.
Oh, yeah. So you probably had three companies each on each section, working alongside another three companies on the other sections, being managed by the client, which was the Bazalgette Limited, which ultimately was raising finance to eventually solve the sewage system for Thames Water. So there were thousands of people being employed, just checking that everyone was doing what they should be doing.
So within this massive system, because you said this was your previous, prior to the CIC company. So how big was your company in this great big structure?
So it was at the point that Tideway came to us, part of the Bazalgette company. Tideway was the name of the project, like Crossrail was for the previous one. And it was just at that point that the company I was working with in the southeast decided that they were going to sell their company to an Icelandic owner. I'm quite dynamic. I like things to happen quickly, and I like things at pace, and I like urgency. It was bought out by the equivalent of what we would call in England a pensions company. Clive yawns to camera. They're not dynamic, they're not quick, they're not urgent. I spent 2 board meetings trying to get a proposal put forward that they wanted to consider, cogitate and just analyse until they were, I think, probably Viking red in the face. So I decided at that point this was not going to work. I needed something fast-paced and urgent. So at that point I asked if it would be okay if I could take the logistics and shipping company that was operating in the southeast, and operate it myself, because without me and my team, they wouldn't have anything to do or people to do it. So I formed a company called Coasterwise, and I moved it to Charlestown here in Cornwall.
Okay.
With my co-director, Alan Watts. We were doing projects like Tideway, but we were also moving at that time around 80% of the wood chip biomass business, which was exported from the UK and going to places like Denmark or Sweden, and a little bit, I think, into Belgium. So at that time, we were moving 5 to 6,000 ton ships from the UK into these countries. I was working in London, going up on a Tuesday, back on a Thursday. Yeah, we were literally rolling. Our turnover was, £120,000 a month. It was we were
company.
Very happy. Yeah, started literally with £1 in the bank.
Do you still have this company going?
No, so that company, and I think this is a lesson learned for all entrepreneurs or any side hustle or any entrepreneur that starts up. It's okay if it doesn't work, but just recognise if it doesn't work and stop.
Step back from it.
So we had a situation where the Tideway project came to an end in 2018. And at that time, we were also going through that thing in the UK called Brexit. And that had an impact to euro and dollar and sterling exchange rates. It also made a lot of the companies we were dealing with very nervous about fixing any long-term contracts for the movement of their materials from one place to another. So gradually, we realised that a lot of the biomass that was being shipped into Europe was now going to be used in the UK. They no longer needed us. We were doing industrial minerals such as China clay. We were doing some gravels, some timber, some steel shipments. And again, those were contracting significantly in that market. So as a result of that, the company was gradually having less and less turnover. And it gets to the point where myself and my fellow director sat down and went,
let's draw the line.
Yeah. So we made sure everyone was paid. There was absolutely no debts at the end of it.
So you wrapped that up in 2018, you said?
No, that would have been wrapped up in 2023. So,
okay, so it took a while.
Yeah, so we used it from 2018 through to
so
2020.
These two things overlap as well?
Yeah, very much so.
I know you for mentoring. Where does that fit into all of this?
So if we go back further in time, and I can almost see a time warped song coming now in my head, so now you can feel a little bit of what goes on. I was supply chain and logistics for the China Clay Company that operated here in Cornwall. Over a period of time, I became the supply chain and logistics general manager for the paper division, which they called Europe, which was anything from Brazil, anything from America, including marble, which was crushed to make calcium carbonate, what they put into photocopier paper, from Marmara down in Turkey or from Greece. So I had a team of 35 people spread across this planet. And you had the Finnish guy who was very slowly spoken, who thought deeply. You had the Swedish guy who wanted us all to sit around a table until we all agreed and facing south. We had a German guy, absolutely awesome, but it was ja or nein. There was yes or no, black or white.
Nothing in between.
Nothing in between.
How would he have dealt with your colourful jackets?
Yes. I think my colourful jackets, embodies my colourful personality. And I've been known for years as being able to engage and lighten up a situation where some people perhaps would find compromise. I tried to turn that compromise into a successful outcome.
Well, joke aside on the colourful jacket, what I'm hearing is that incredible diversity this international team
Correct.
brought to the table.
Yeah.
And everybody having, well, it must have been difficult for each and every one of these people because the personalities were so different.
Yes.
But what did you achieve from discussions, roundtable discussions with these people?
I think we'll put the two opposites, and there's an article which I'm sure we can share on the socials, and when this one goes out, which explains a little bit about why I came into mentoring, the conversation we've just started. It is that cultural diversity, that individual personality and that character that actually has their own stick of rock They've become a result of nature, nurture, academic and commercial institutions, relationships that they've had, and have become this thing. But they became that thing in Italy and Germany and Brazil and Finland and Sweden. And I like people, and I really, really can engage, I think, with everybody, including people that I find difficult to sit with. Within the article, we refer to that person as a polar mentor, the person who literally you'd rather put pins in your
opposite.
eyes. Yeah. Who is, if I'm fast spoken and got 1,000 ideas, they will be slowly spoken and think about things for a year. But if you don't look at the perspective of someone else, or stand in their shoes, or wear their spectacles and see it from their approach, you will never be able to look at things holistically and find what's best for someone.
Do you find that you need to be mature enough to be able to sadly, it is kind of thing, like just human nature, that when you're young and fiery and you just want to go and conquer the world, you don't quite have enough life experience to understand the value of listening to somebody else, or, as you said, standing in their shoes. Unfortunately, we have to be old enough to have had enough experience to understand this and actually take from it.
I think the word I use is wisdom. Yeah.
Yes.
The older you get, the more wisdom you have. That wisdom isn't necessarily based on you being academically brilliant, or that you know better than anyone else because you've done it before, which is probably the worst scenario of what wisdom could be used for. But for me, wisdom is about knowing when things have worked, accepting when things haven't worked, and knowing why those things didn't work, and took time to reflect on why that didn't work and how you could have done it differently, or how you did do it differently on that occasion. And if you can merge this people, characters, cultural diversity, language barriers, specialism within, like in my circumstances, road, rail, sea, barge, sales support, moving 30,000-ton ships coming from Brazil right the way down to moving a truck from a new facility in Belgium. That inside each of those specialists, if you like, put them into pillars, you've got that horizontal skill set of people being able to work with other people to get a better outcome. And for my sins, I think my skill set is actually getting the best out of people. And I think that's why in 2018, when the Tideway project came almost to an end, and 2023, when CoasterWise closed, that I went back to this company that I'd formed in 2009. So 2009 was when I left the China Clay Company, having done, I think, just shy of 25 years. And I sat with a mentor on the other side. And it was, I am now the poacher turned gamekeeper, because I now work for that individual who mentored me at that time in 2009, Louise Cantrill Skylight Associates. We're working on career outplacement and career development for people going through transformational change. There's a whole piece around that. Maybe just look at Kubler-Ross as a reference point of that. It's for both grief and transformational change. And she said, Clive, she said, I know you have a deep knowledge in your sectors. She said, but I also know your team have a much better knowledge than you have, which is where you've gained your knowledge
Interesting
from.
Analysis.
She says, but I've spoken to every one of your teams. She said, and I've never seen this. She said, they'll do anything for you. And we did that. I think they call it an Insights 360 feedback. So you ask questions and you get their honest feedback, but it comes anonymously. And I heard probably for the first time, I'd heard it before, but I'd read for the first time what people actually thought of my style, my approach, my personality, my character, and my skill set. And she said, I think you need a career in people. So I've done 25 years.
What an amazing compliment that is. Because people are so difficult. I mean, I know myself. I mean, it's hard enough managing myself, never mind other people managing me.
It's even to the point, and there's a whole piece around that on managing or leading. Leadership is letting the person that has the best skills to lead at that time, rather than relying upon the managers in those functions to be able to do their specialism or expertise. And Louise said at the time, she said, this team will do anything for you. She said, and it doesn't matter if they're in Brazil or Italy or Finland or Sweden or Germany. She said, or in the Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg area. She said, and actually you can get inside those people and understand what it is that makes them, she used the word happy. I like the word content. I think the eternal search for happiness is a fruitless exercise in the same way as seeking perfection. I much prefer being content and being the best that you can be on that day.
Any given point.
Yeah. And that's really where, I think that's where I cut my stone to make what I've become, which is a wise mentor with wisdom to be able to pass on to others, maybe to let them make less mistakes than me, maybe to give them some expertise that I've gained in one sector or one person or one activity at a time, but also to recognize that even as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, side hustles, juniorpreneur, duopreneur, all of those titles. Encorepreneur, that you can't do everything yourself. And I had a team of 35 people, and yet businesses start up, as I've started up, with 1 or 2 or 3 people. So work out the things you're really, really good at, that you have a passion for and a meaningful purpose and reason to get out of bed and achieve it. And the bits that you don't like, and it might be the bookkeeping, it might be the tax, it might be the social media, it might be the marketing, it might even be the production. You might just be the ideas person. If you're not good at it, you will take much longer to achieve it. So let someone else do that bit.
That's interesting, that point, because what I'm experiencing with myself is that I did sort of an administration-based work for many years in the past. So I'm very good at it.
Yeah.
But that's considered to be a sort of low-rate job.
Yes.
And when there are things to do, I find myself falling back onto what I do well,
yes.
which is the admin work.
Yeah.
But it's not something that's the needle-moving or the money-making task.
Yeah.
And it's kind of easy to hide away behind the screen to do that. So how do I knock myself out of that? Because, as you say, so you identify what you do really well or passionate about. I think it's probably, would you agree with that? It's more important to identify what I'm passionate about.
Yes.
Work up my skills on that front, even if I right now can't do it, and try and move away from things that I am actually good at, but are not needle-moving tasks for the business.
I think I would look at that in 2 ways. One, let's use the analogy of a waiter and a chef. Yeah, we've got some amazing chefs here in the UK, and we've got some of them operating here in Cornwall. A chef is normally the one you talk about the most. You want to go to Paul Ainsworth, or you want to go to one of these incredible restaurants. But ultimately, the waiter, the first point of contact that you have when you walk into that restaurant is the person you will remember most. I've had incredible food with poor service. I would never go back.
Yes, you are.
I've had amazing service and the food's been okay, but the way that they dealt with it, oh, wow, I'll go back every day. So we must always remember that everyone has a part to play in the structure, whether it be admin, clerical. I could not have done my 24 years in industrial minerals without the amazing Lisa Damrell, who was my PA. She made my life easy. I woke up on a Sunday and there was my agenda for what I needed to do, what flights I needed to take, who I was going to meet, and some of the people or activities that I needed to understand. So everyone has their part to play within this matrix of being able to make stuff work. So saying that, first of all, value yourself as the skill set that you've got. But the opposite side of that is it was easy for me in 2009 just literally to go back to, I need to find somewhere that does shipping, logistics, road and rail, because that is easy because I've done it before. And unless we crack out of that outer shell, I've used the phrase already on the podcast of a stick of rock. We need to just crack that stick of rock to allow ourselves to expand. Like a lobster, it grows 3 shells. It will grow its first shell, and then gradually it's bursting into that shell, and it hides under a rock until it gets rid of that one and it builds another shell. And then it hides under a bigger rock, and then it breaks out of that shell. If you don't break out of that shell, you will always be a small lobster. Let's use that as the analogy. So if you go back to doing things...
Do lobsters die in their small shells? Because it literally suffocates them.
If they can't shed their shell and find a rock in time to be able to grow their new one or get eaten by someone, which is a high risk for lobsters.
Okay, sorry. In my mind's eye, I imagined that the lobster would climb under a rock to be able to kind of literally lodge the old shell and climb out of it. But I suppose, no, it's more like...
It has to grow.
Live under the rock
to
protect itself
shell.
until it's protected by the shelf rather than the rock.
Yes, it's really easy to go back to what you're really good at and what you've been used to. But unless you break that shell and try and find new boundaries, widen your horizons, look for new opportunities, become a more curious, creative version of yourself,
oh my goodness,
you will never change.
I must admit that doing this podcast has been revolutionary for me. I've always been a perfectionist.
Yep.
But to painful levels.
Okay.
Yes, where I kind of recognised that it was hindering me, but I would still be very perfectionist. And then podcasting kind of found me, and it's taken me by storm, really. I love it. I love interviewing people. I love talking to people. It is amazing, something really amazing to do.
And the one thing that you might not see when you had that conversation, you were talking about, I really don't want to go back to doing admin, but that's where I go to because I'm safe. You have just literally, your eyes have come alive. You've started to sparkle. Your smile is huge because you've got a passion, a meaningful purpose for doing something you enjoy.
And you know
broken
what it's
the
done?
shell. It's amazing.
Yeah, I have completely. That perfectionist shell, because from the very, very beginning, not a single interview has gone right completely. Something happened every time at one stage or another. And all I was doing was just getting on with it. For the first time in my life, I think, I was just getting on with it. All I knew, I want to get this podcast out there into the world because it's a good idea. Everybody's been complimenting on it. So that's given me the fuel to carry on. And it's now out there. And it's completely cracked that perfectionist shell around me, and I feel the growth in me, and it's amazing.
I think part of that is wisdom, which we've touched upon already, that actually we know what we are, but we've now started to stretch ourselves, grow like a lobster or crack our candy shell of our stick of rock to become something different. And that this beautiful thing happens that when you get there, you think, oh, I wish I did this before. Oh, I really love doing this so much. And other people like doing what I do, which gives me then the fuel for being able to do it more. And I have to say already, if you can't see this on the podcast, if you're purely listening to this, what we have is a podcaster here that has literally got an aura of pink and yellow and red and beautiful colours coming out going, this is what I want to do. I've bought some books, and I think it's quite... useful at this point to explain why I bought them.
Enough.
Because
I was going to ask back though. I wanted to loop back to what you said just before. My little analysis was, so what did you become from that lady's comments of you being a people person?
I literally formed a company called the Really Useful Advice Company Limited. It was too long. And every time I went into a room wearing a very loud, vivacious and certainly gregarious and flamboyant jacket, I would say, I'm Clive Kessell from the Really Useful Advice Company Limited. And people like Shane Solomon, whose studio we're using today, or David Brock, one of the big networkers across the UK from your partnerships, they literally would respond with, really? So I contacted a design agency, one of my clients, Big Box Advertising, Big Box Creative, and I said, you need to rebrand me. No, everyone there knows me as Really. So my brand is literally now Really with an exclamation mark, and it's in a dark navy night blue, like the dark sky in the winter, that then has the colours of orange, which are like the embers of a flame that I can fan as a mentor to be able to make people successful. They did an amazing rebrand, and it combined with the same time as I did a published article, which I know you've seen.
Yes.
So I became Really exclamation mark. And you know when your brand and also what you do is accepted by others, is that I now get referrals when I'm not in the room from people that have had a conversation with a side hustler, an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, and they say, if you've got this idea, you need to speak to Clive. He'll be able to help you.
How wonderful is that? So go on, tell me a little bit about it. So what do you do?
So
why do people go, really?
I can be outrageous. I live by consequence.
You don't say.
I hate compromise because as soon as you find a constraint that you compromise yourself to, all you will do is make things smaller, and probably in the same way as you dilute orange juice with lemonade. If you keep pouring in lemonade, you will eventually end up with no orange juice. It was orange juice that we... If we can remember that we can live by consequence, let's find out what the penalty is of doing what we do, rather than complying with everything that people tell us that we can do. It could be to the point, everyone's gone to an airport at some point and there's a yellow line in front of the passport office, with the guys there, or ladies, stamping I am that person that goes, I put my foot across the line. I've moved my foot across the line for those listening. What would happen? Is the world going to crash around me? Are there going to be people carrying AK-47s? Am I going to be arrested? I'm going to be thrown into a room, maybe with a latex glove. Who knows? But what would happen if, and I think an entrepreneur, and all of the side hustlers in this world thrive on what if. What if I did that? What if I did that? And I think the alternative part to that is then say, so what? So what if I did that? So what if I did? If there's nothing else you take away from that, those are my words of wisdom. And also, partly plagiarised by an amazing guy that I sat watching at the TEDx talks in Truro a couple of months ago, who used that line and developed it much further. And by all means, TEDx Truro, you'll be able to see that. What I think I've become is pushing people's boundaries, creating a more curious version of themselves, widening their horizons, and then surrounding them by people who can do the bits they're not good at or might be able to add some polish. I take them on a journey. And I've used
colourful one, I imagine.
Well, I've used a train journey, which currently is the longest one in the UK, from Glasgow to Penzance.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Have you actually travelled that journey?
I've travelled part of it. I didn't use all of it, because I think it stopped at Plymouth on that day. So that would be about 45 minutes away from where I live. But it's 12 hours and 29 minutes if it's all running on time, sat on a train. But one of the things that trains do is they stop in stations.
Of course.
They pause. So if you can pause in a station to take times to reflect, in the same way as you use this analogy for your journey to whatever success might look like, it's also okay to get off at that train station and just make sure that everything is okay before you make sure that everything gets done. It's also okay to go back a few stations and go, do you know what? I don't think I finished doing that properly. Not the search of perfection, but I could have done it better. And if I did it better, I might be able to steam or race forward a few more stations.
Interesting that you draw a parallel with a very long train journey, but I suppose that could be reflected to our life. But then my mind is thinking about, let's say, the Tamar line, but it's a little local train line and rather short. It's got about 6 stops.
Yes.
And they do a day rider, and they actually encourage people. There's like a parallel little activity that goes with it, where you can do kind of like a pub crawl and get stamps, and then collect a T-shirt at the end of it. So, but the idea is the same, that you get off at a station, explore that little local area, get back on the next train, go to the next station, and of course then utilise the local offerings of either a pub, a shop, whatever is there.
But what you'll also find, and the reason I've used a train and not a car or a van or a minibus, is you will end up having conversations with people that you'd never met before. The joy of the ticketing system within the UK is that you buy a ticket from station A to station D. You might be on that train journey for your entire journey, right the way through to your current final destination. We'll come back. But you also realise you have to change seats. So you'll meet with people that you never knew you needed to meet, have a conversation that you didn't think you were going to have, that might widen your horizons and perhaps make you look at things if they're a different perspective or stand in their shoes. It also means that if you can reflect, go back, get things done properly, meet people along the way, that your journey will become smoother. And we know on a train journey, when you're deep in conversation, enjoying what you're doing and everything's okay, that journey passes quicker. So you enter a time warp. But let's race ourselves ahead to the final destination. It's the final countdown. If we end up then at Penzance railway station, for those of you not been there, Penzance, beautiful place here in the far west of Cornwall, just before you get to Land's End. But you go out of the doors of the station, and there in front of you on the stone, built into the stone, is ferries to the Isles of Scilly. There will always be another destination, even though you've got to your end of the line at Penzance.
Yes.
And that ferry that can take you to St Mary's, can take you to Brar or one of the other islands. But on those islands, you might meet people that are on a yacht or a speedboat that could take you to the Adriatic, the Mediterranean, North Africa. So just because you've ended up at a destination that you currently can foresee, that you can imagine, and that you're okay with, doesn't mean to say that you can't find another destination later. And for us,
that is such a beautiful message. I'd just like to dwell on it for a moment. There is a beautiful message to literally anyone in business or wanting to get into business or wherever they are in their life, especially like the whole point of the Uncorepreneurs Club is encouraging people to make their hobbies into a business or their dreams into something of a success. And listeners perhaps who are working in corporate have got children who've grown up and they think like, okay, I'm facing retirement in some years, but I'm bored in this job. What am I going to do? But I love doing this, then the other. Have the courage to come out of that station rather than just sit on the bench in that station and see the sign for the next bit and actually make their dreams a reality. There's always more.
Many years ago, there was a program, you can find it on YouTube for sure, called Paradise Island. It was a place where your dreams came true. One of the morals at the end of the show on every occasion was what you're dreaming for might not necessarily be the best answer. So accept that you might not get it right first time. Accept that what you're trying to do might not be the thing that you end up doing. But if you're stuck in a corporate world or a role that you don't enjoy, or you've got that germ of an idea, or you've got that concept that you've always sort of hankered at, I just wonder if it would be successful. Work at it in small bites. What is it they say is a Buddhist quote? If you wish to eat an elephant, take small bites. Do a little bit of something to find out whether that, let's call it a side hustle, whether that side hustle could be something either to do in later life or gradually move, as I call it, in the halcyon period from full employment into retirement. Not that retirement means not working. For goodness sake, have some meaningful purpose to keep you occupied. And it's not just golf and it's not just watching the TV. Have something that really inspires you and gets you out of bed on a Monday morning because you really want to do it.
To have a complete healthy life, you know exactly what I do. My routine is my everything at the minute, is to look after my physical health, my mental health, my spiritual health and my intellectual health. And, looking at my in-laws who are pushing 80, they are still doing all of these things because they are absolutely, completely, bluntly refusing to grow old.
And I think the most important thing is if there is a real movement right now that actually we should all be aiming to be at least 100 years. I don't want to be at the age, I don't know, the current average age expectancy in the UK, I think is around 92, 93, and they're pushing it to try and get to 100. I don't want to be dribbling in a corner, having my backside wiped by someone who really doesn't know or care for me, is just an employed job. I literally want to be standing on the cliffs of Cornwall singing Bohemian Rhapsody, dressed up as Freddie Mercury, and saying to my son and daughter, Harry and Maddie, yes, it's Dad again, saying to them, there is a life beyond what you're doing now, and it's a journey that will lead to a destination that might lead to a future destination. But have a plan A. I'm not an advocate for plan B. Plan B means I've got an excuse if plan A doesn't work. Plan A needs to be agile, transformative. It needs to be able to be flexible, and it needs to be able to adapt to whatever circumstances or situations that you find yourself in. But be the person you want to be. Do that thing that you've always thought, is it going to work? I work with an awful lot of people that have come up with an idea. We sweat it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Normally we'll find something else. or will find something that they thought was an idea maybe hasn't worked, but along that journey, we've met someone, saw something else, and then
And they all guided us one day or another.
Exactly.
And shaped us.
Yeah, that's why I ended up doing mentoring. That's why I love people. That's why I will sit in front of anyone to try and make my catchphrase underneath really, exclamation mark, is turning great ideas into successful outcomes. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I am like a rash you can't get an ointment for. And you will see the colour within those profiles, which probably
I've got to say, for those who are not watching, just listening, I'm bitterly disappointed. So Clive is known for his bright and colourful jackets. And today of all days, he turned up in probably his most muted, grey, stripy jacket.
I have got more muted, but my dilemma, I've got over 40 jackets and waistcoats, and they are literally from outrageous to courageous through to ridiculous and then through to slightly more staid.
I feel insulted that you came in your quietest jacket.
Well, I did look at the brand and it was pink and white, and I thought, well, I could wear a pink shirt and I would wear the stripes.
Well, thank you for that effort. I appreciate that.
And I also didn't want it to be, one of the jackets that I most recently bought is orange and yellow and purple, and it literally shouts at you.
I probably would have loved that one.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure whether or not that would have given a great videography for this beautiful vlogcast. But you will see lots of pictures. So one of the reasons I wear my jackets is one of the things that I use with my clients, and you've just picked up one of my books.
And so that would be a perfect moment to return to what you wanted to talk about, your books, because you brought a pile of books. Be a Flamingo. I think that kind of represents, like, literally, be bright, pink, beautiful, stand out, pretty, gorgeous, look at me.
Be who you want to be, but stand out from a crowd. Maybe for the video so that we can see. I stole this from my daughter's bedroom. She was quite young at the time. It was a selection of books, so you can't actually buy the book individually, it only comes in a box set. The reason I chose it, if you can just in your mind's eye, even if you're not watching now, just purely listening, if you're driving, don't close your eyes, is stand on one leg.
Okay, hang on a minute. So close your eyes.
Yeah. So you're now a pink flamingo standing on one leg. Why are flamingos pink?
Isn't it the shrimp they eat in that particular area they fly to?
Correct. Did you know there's a white flamingo?
No, only in zoos where they don't necessarily get the same nutrition.
There are white flamingos which don't feed on pink things.
Oh, okay.
So if you feed off pink things, you could become pink. So if you take that analogy, if you feed off something that is really good for you, you will become that person. You're linking back to nutrition, hydration,
I was just
agility,
about to say that. And we don't have to think food. It's mind food, it's body food, it's brain food, it's spirit food, heart
it's all
food.
what you said that you're trying to have as a life, and I've tried to sort of connect the two. So a couple of facts, just purely because at this point we need people to keep listening, but more importantly to imagine what flamingo they might be. You might want to be a giraffe, but make it purple. You might want to be a leopard, but let's do it in pink and brown spots. Be the person that you want to be, not changing your beliefs, just change a bit of your behaviour, maybe your outer shell. So a couple of facts of a flamingo. How many hours do they stand on each leg?
Absolutely no idea.
4 hours.
Each.
So they stand for 4 hours, they then rest, and then they stand for 4 hours. So to be a pink flamingo is pretty hard work, standing on one leg for a period of time. So don't give up.
So that's 8 hours. What do they do for the rest?
So 4 hours on, 4 hours off, and then they keep going.
Okay.
So over a period
do they actually sit down on a nest or lay down for sleep? Or
no, they literally close their eyes, tuck it under, and tuck one leg up. So they sleep standing up. So that's not a recommendation for starving yourself of sleep during the entrepreneur journey, because literally you will need your rest as much as hydration, nutrition, and feeding you mentally and physically.
And spiritually.
And spiritually. The most important part here is you are without a doubt the person that you want to be, but it might have been cloaked in corporate, cloaked in academia, cloaked in relationships that you've had. Break out of that shell. Smash your candy shell of your stick of rock. rip off the cloaks of commerce and academia and relationships and start to be the person you want to be.
I
don't
think-
care if it's a flamingo or an orange giraffe. That's
I
where
think that's
start.
exactly the kind of thing I went through last year on my 50th birthday or around that time.
Yep.
And taken a complete pivot in my life. And I think it all stems back to a little chain of events. But the main thing was I kept saying that I want to do something amazing with my life. And a year later, here I am.
Exactly.
Sitting on sofas, interviewing amazing people and hearing their amazing stories, sharing them with the world.
And I think it's not easy to break out of that shell. So what I'm not suggesting is literally going down one route one day and then turning around and literally heading in another direction. Trial stuff, do stuff, see what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And the most important thing that when you get to that point is have a reason why. So you've picked up another book, which is actually Japanese. It says it's...
Yeah, so I went with the flowers. You see, I'm a girly girl. I mean, come on, look at my branding.
It's the brand. We're on tune.
I'm only wearing a single coloured dress today because I was expecting you in a really bright jacket and I didn't want to clash.
I've let you down.
Mind you, we do match. So we turned up to an event today. Actually, if we turned up to an event today, we would go very well, wouldn't we?
We would be literally the couple, the podcaster and the mentor. I'm sure there must be a joke there.
A lot of blue, a little bit of pink, a little flair.
And a book with a little bit of blue, a little bit of pink, and a little bit of flair.
The book, so that's why I went with. Ikigai. I have actually heard about this from a lovely lady in Plymouth. She's a fellow property investor, and she's now mentoring people. And she, I'm saying it in a very good way, preaching about Ikigai. It's a fantastic philosophy, isn't it?
The only thing I would change, if it's me, because what we should do is we should take something that someone else has found, said, or investigated, but create your own version. Yeah, become the white flamingo version of the pink flamingo, or whatever.
Well, but the white flamingo is deprived of what it's supposed to eat.
Or it was always white and never knew it was pink until it ate pink things.
Okay.
It depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
So what Ikigai in Japanese, it says it's the search for happiness. I don't believe we should search for happiness. I do believe we should search for contentment.
Because happiness is a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a journey. And Ikigai, if you translate it into English, is reason why. Or we're here in Cornwall, Dwessen Bara, which is reason why. Now in Cornwall, there's a song called The Reason Why.
Okay.
If you've got a reason why, a meaningful purpose, a reason to get out of bed on a Monday morning in February at 6 o'clock, the alarm's not gone off, you've had a power cut, the blouse you wanted to wear that day was still in the wash. You get out into the car's got a flat tyre. You've changed the tyre, you get to the service station, give me a coffee, and as you're drinking the coffee, you pour it over the shirt or blouse that you've just put. But you continue your journey because you've got a reason why, a meaningful purpose, and that's why you got out of bed. If nothing else, look at the back page of this book. It has four interlocking circles. I was looking for the graph and
it's on the back.
Those four interlocking circles, it's the time that we can use a Venn diagram for benefit. I was never good at maths. And on that back page, it will explain to you how you can have a place in this world where you can achieve everything that I believe human beings should be striving for.
Absolutely. I mean, just a very, very quick analysis. So what I'm trying to put out into the world is helping people find pockets of time where they can swap out old habits, bad habits for good habits. Because, I can hear literally everybody I speak to screaming in their head, like, I don't have time for this. And that's how I started. I don't have time for this. For 2.5 years, I was procrastinating, saying I don't have time for exercise. And then I found it. But so what I love my morning routine. Yeah. What the world needs is just a little help, a little nudge to show them how to find that time. But am I good at? I'm actually very good at keeping to my routine. Even when I go on holiday, even when I go away, I do whatever I can. If I don't have time for all of it, I just do whatever I can. Like this morning, I was stuck for time, so I did only 10 minutes exercise, not 20, and so on. And what can be paid for. So, of course, mentoring, passing on knowledge is something that we can be paid for. So, effectively, I found my profession, my vocation, my mission, my passion. And in the center of that
You've got your reason
is my
why.
ikigai.
And I think there's 3 things you've touched upon there, which links in quite nicely to the methodology that I use. It's not unique. What is unique is my approach to it. So the search for happiness, let's go for contentment. The other book, this is very American. So Simon Sinek.
But still.
It Start With Why. There's if nothing else, there's a little YouTube. If you search on YouTube for Start With Why by Simon Sinek, there's an abridged version that tells you one of the things that you need to have before you can start your journey.
Yeah, that's his TED Talk, isn't it?
Yeah, TED Talk.
I mean, a fantastic book. I mean, his journey, when you get to the end of the book and you hear his absolute light bulb moment, then it makes every bit of sense.
And if you can have a reason why, you can then apply ikigai, that rhymed. Sorry, there's a song there going through my head. One of the things that you touched upon at that point was I need to change some habits. James Clear, Atomic Habits. Again, an incredible book, which also, when you buy the book, you sign up to his newsletter, and he will send you every week 3 of these atomic habits. What are they? Let's not get too complicated on systems and processes. Change 3 habits a day and imagine where you'll be in a year.
Yeah, but even if you just change 1 habit a week, I think 3 habits a day is really quite a tall order, but 1 habit a week, or just make tiny adjustments. And he does talk about that story of the British cycling team, just 1% change in a few things, but continuously. And I would recommend one book alongside this one from Darren Hardy called Compound Effect. I think the 2 go very well together. That you change little things in your life. And I think what's important to learn from this, because Atomic Habits, James Clear is encouraging us to include good habits into our lives. Yeah. But what Darren Hardy explains is that the compound effect works both ways. Yeah. So if you start to implement teeny weeny little bad habits in your life,
correct,
they compound as well. And that's when you can become a couch potato, losing a job, losing a family, whatever. Or you can actually better yourself and implement good habits into your life and become that successful business person.
Absolutely. One of the things, what we don't want to do is adopt a habit that actually is creating a worse version of ourselves. But again, I take a book and then I probably disrupt it. So my version of this, undoubtedly there will be some people that listen and watch this who have sat with me on a couch having conversations, probably in one of the lovely hotels and coffee bars here in Cornwall. And I will get them to change 1 or 2 or 3 of their habits, but I will do it proper disruptively. I will get them to brush their teeth in the morning with the opposite hand. Literally. It is so weird. You start moving your head, then you start wobbling your bottom, and then you think, well, what's this hand going to do when it's been so used from the first time you picked up a toothbrush? That habit has been embedded in your daily life, at least twice, maybe 3 times a day. So change something that is properly going to send a message through to your entire psyche, your spiritual in purpose. Something's changing in me. I am now going to brush my teeth with the left instead of the right. And then after you brush your teeth, you're going to get dressed, You will probably put your shoe on either by the right or the left, or your sock by the right or the left first.
Force yourself to do something different.
Swap it over. Literally, you will fall over. This is a true fact. I've had people send me pictures of toothpaste all over their black blouse and someone lying on the floor going, that didn't work. So, and maybe the third thing is something that you do every single day that you've always done. And what I would ask you is just do it differently. I don't care how different it is, but just do the opposite of what you normally do.
It really
start it tomorrow.
Wakes up the brain, doesn't it?
Correct. And it says change is coming. I can now see my train with a little steam engine going through a tunnel, and it's coming out the other side, and we're in a much better place. But the one thing that you also touch upon is not only changing habits, and let's make sure they're good, not bad, taking both of the references, is just get on and do it.
Yeah, that is absolutely brilliant.
So I'm just showing again to camera a book by Brian Tracy, which is called Eat That Frog. Again, all of these are available on all the normal booksellers. Eat That Frog is do the thing that you hate the most first. Get it done because the rest of the day is going to be a lot better. And procrastination, putting stuff off till tomorrow, or I think, as we talked about earlier in this podcast, actually, I'll just go back to the things that I enjoy doing. And we end up going back to
not facing the hard
for
things.
myself.
But tell you what, on that note, not facing hard things, for me, what's been revolutionary in building up my routine has been the cold shower.
Yes.
The determination that it feeds in me to do things, and then for the rest of the day and weeks and months, just get on with it. And even when it's hard, just get on with it. Nothing's going to be quite as hard as the cold shower almost first thing in the morning.
And I think you take that as an example. Not only is it a cold shower, not a hot shower, which we've been used to, it will also give you that cold water shock that sends a message to the brain that something is different today. And actually, no matter what happens, you're going to be warmer for the rest of the day than you were first thing. But it lights up all of the endorphins and the serotonins and the adrenaline and everything. It keeps our human body connected chemically, but also spiritually, because at that point in the cold shower, you can imagine yourself in the sea or underneath a rainwater waterfall, maybe here at Goliath Falls or Angel Falls here in Cornwall. So my routine, which we said we would talk about, everyone has their own individual routine and it really needs to be bespoke to them. So mine is, again, it starts a cold shower to a hot shower, but I've got a disco shower.
A what, sorry?
A disco shower.
Okay.
I have LED lights that colour change in accordance with the music, and I've got a speaker that literally this morning I was singing at the top of my voice a George Ezra number, but I'm often known to be singing Bohemian Rhapsody or any Queen number at the top of my voice without a care in the world, showering with colourful lights in a room full of steam by the end of it. And that starts my day every single day. Then I brush my teeth with the wrong hand, then I will shave. Don't try that with the other hand. Literally, you will kill yourself. And then go into my morning routine of then, what jacket am I going to wear to be able to go out today and just do what I love doing.
Is helping people run their business better.
Or help them be successful. I might not be able to help them in their specialist or expertise that they are trying to create from their side hustle into an enterprise. So.
On that note, that was so great from that newspaper article that we mentioned, or the magazine article, that you lay out all these different mentors and guides that we have in our lives. And as business people, we all know we get advice, get a mentor, get a good mentor. And we just think as one.
Yeah.
But then that page made me realise, actually, there's so many people who help us, and not just qualified people, but other people in our lives, whether they are relatives or friends or just complete strangers, really.
And I
sometimes.
think, if we use, so within the mentoring and probably coaching world, and I probably merge a little bit of both within it, is we've all got, on my left shoulder, I'm pointing to now, we've got our bestie, someone who knows everything about us, and sits there, but is great counsel, always there for support. Over on that,
they're not a good one to listen to because they will always encourage, or sometimes maybe they will tell you when you're doing wrong, but otherwise they will.
Most of the time, they've got your back. They're your buddy, aren't they? If you go to the opposite shoulder, now touching my right shoulder, that's maybe your partner, and maybe in a relationship or someone that you know, or maybe even within a business structure. Someone who actually knows some stuff about you, but not everything that your bestie knows. What a mentor should be able to do is create a triangle. I'm pointing now to my head from my two shoulders. The mentor should sit there as non-judgmental, fully objective, listening to the views of the bestie, listening to the views of the partner, and then identifying where there's any gaps, and then filling in those gaps with other mentors. And we touched upon the article. There could be a need of a specialist mentor, So I'm working with a new client at the moment in the 2 and 3 now, in fact, in the dance sector, dance and fitness.
Interesting.
And they want to be the best dance and fitness in their area. And I said, well, what about having a specialist dance mentor? Well, who is the person that you would love just to be able to have the support of? And they go away and they come back and say, this is person I would love. And all 3 of them had different dancers that they wanted to reflect. I said, right, start to engage, start to follow, start to look where they dwell, start to look at things they're interested in, show them stuff that you're doing. one conversation with them might lead to you doing something differently. More importantly, will stand you out from a crowd, because you will be then the key person of influence in your market, and you will then no longer be competing against the competition. You'll be competing against the market of everybody that wants to do dance and fitness. So a specialist mentor, there are times it might be specialist in marketing or accountancy or tax or fiscal or engineering or manufacturing or construction or all of those individual specialisms. But sometimes we might need someone who's got a vast amount of wisdom, intellect, and also practical wisdom on being a specialist in that sector. We've mentioned the buddy mentor. We've also mentioned the partner. Unfortunately, they're normally right. It's just sometimes you need some non-objective, fully judgmental person to advise you. What we then also have, we touched upon earlier, is the polar mentor, someone literally who is your opposite.
And they are the ones who are probably the most important, because they are the ones who are going to make you think outside the box. Yeah. Is that right?
For those listening, I'm now rocking like a Romanian chain bear. My polar opposite, I had a circumstance, this must have been in 2008. And I was working back in the supply chain and logistics. Yeah. We were given a budget of 30 million euros to build this new thing. And we were halfway through the project and it looked as though it was going to be at 33 million. The French owners of the company turned around, no, this will not overspend. You need to sit in a room with your polar opposite. So just prior to Bristol Airport, there is a hotel. We were locked in a room there with only coffee and biscuits for, I think, just shy of 8 hours. I think about 7 hours we escaped.
That's a fair day.
Yeah, no phones, just charts, pens and post-it notes. My heaven. He came at it from a completely different perspective. He asked me questions I'd never even considered. He looked at things that I thought were completely outrageous, unreasonable, not practical. And as a result of that, and my enthusiasm and ideas, and having to stop talking and sitting on my hands and waiting for him, I'm rocking again, waiting for him to respond, we ended up, if you remember, I started at 30 million, it was going to 33. We left that room with a total budget spend of 4.7 million instead.
That's mental.
Wow. Still a friend of mine on LinkedIn, and he was innovation and research and technology, and he had a brain the size of a planet. He was from Finland, and in Finland, they spend a lot of time thinking about stuff, and I think probably because of the lack of sun during various periods and the lack of night in other periods. But he was a deep thinker. I'm not a deep thinker. I literally have got 1,000... someone described me once. Working with Clive is like riding a unicycle whilst he's juggling, eating an apple, watching a liquidizer full of coloured marbles being turned on at full pelt.
And on that bombshell, what a sight that is to end this conversation on. You on a unicycle, wearing a bright jacket, juggling, eating an apple,
watching a liquidizer full of coloured marbles being turned on.
Without a lid.
Oh, yeah, it's gone.
Spitting out a rainbow.
Oh, now we're talking. Literally, I've got the M&M adverts, other sweets are
available. Awesome. Clive, you've been an amazing whirlwind of a guest. Can I just ask you a few very, very quick questions now? Really, one-word answers.
Yep.
Are you looking to retire at any point in your life?
Never.
Never. Would you think about setting up another business?
Yes.
Have you got any ideas for a new business?
Probably.
One? Many?
A new business.
One-word answers, please.
Probably.
Okay.
I can't think of one right now. I think because I meet with so many different people and they come up with ideas. That's... I will never buy into one of my clients' businesses, not because I don't believe in it. I need to be independent. So I will start more businesses. I will never retire.
What book would you recommend to somebody starting up a new business? But would you be able to pick one that stands out from the rest?
I think the ones we covered today will undoubtedly give you a flavour, but the one which we haven't really gone into, and I think it's probably a good one to cover, is A Beautiful Constraint by Adam Morgan.
The book is here.
Yeah, it smells like a stationery cupboard, so it's printed. It's amazing. During your journey into whatever your side hustle is going to be, you will come across constraints. Do not compromise. Turn that constraint into your greatest advantage. The really simple one I'll use as an analogy from this, Pizza Hut, many years ago, employed this marketing agency to make them the best pizza company in the world, marketing, media, message. So Adam said, yeah, that's fine. Can we come into a restaurant, have a look at it, see what you do? He's Australian. I won't do an Australian accent. They went there and they said, you've got round pizzas in a round pizza oven. If you make it square, you'll be more effective, efficient, and economic. And the guys turned around, do not tell us.
You can spin a square pizza.
Don't tell us how to make a pizza. He said, if you make a square pizza, I'll trademark it. Turned their biggest constraint into their advantage. They still have the only trademark square pizza. You can now have a gluten intolerance one, which has no bread. So it's just oregano, tomato, onion, olive oil and garlic.
There you go. So the book recommendation is a beautiful constraint to transform your limitations into advantages. That is really good. And finally, would you have any recommendation for me of another person who started a new business in later life?
One would be Stephen Webb, my co-director on the CIC, because he also does mindfulness and spiritual work, and he's an incredible advocate and has become a very close friend of mine. You will love a conversation with him, and literally you'll need a day.
I'd love. Oh gosh!
I would thoroughly recommend a conversation with Steve.
Clive, thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
I've loved it. Thank you.
And thank you for the colourful conversation.
You're very welcome.
I hope you've been inspired by this Swiss Army knife of a man and joined in with all the giggling. There was lots of really useful advice from Clive, especially at the end from the books. If you want to meet him in person, you can do so at the West Country Business Show on the 17th of July in Exeter. If you are local to Devon, Somerset and Cornwall, or you can take advantage of his free session by contacting him. The contact methods are, of course, in the show notes. With passion for leading people to success, alongside music, theatre, performance, fun and fundraising, Clive is a true polymath. I hope you enjoyed the show.